Hello, welcome to cruisereport.com, Travel Tech Reviews. Today we're going to talk about the Panasonic DMC-FZ100. This is a super zoom digital from Panasonic, and it's their newest model in their high zoom or super zoom range cameras. And it replaces, or doesn't really replace it, but it's the next in the line up from the FZ45. And this is a interesting camera that I was really excited to try. We took it on a 13-night cruise and we tested it. The camera, as you can tell, is a little bit larger than your typical, I'm going to get a little pocket digital here. This is our Panasonic ZS7 that we use at cruisereport.com, and as you can see, the camera is quite a bit larger. So whereas this will slip in your pocket, obviously the FZ100 is going to be too large to do that. Again, I always like to emphasize that when we talk in these videos and on our website, we try to review a camera from the perspective of a traveler, a cruise traveler, or anybody that travels, and how does this camera fit the needs of the casual user. There's a lot of websites out there that do a great job of reviewing cameras geared towards professional photography. One of our favorites is cameralabs.com. They do excellent detailed technical information, so we don't get into a lot of the technical detailed specifications of the cameras. What I like to do is I want to tell you, how does this camera going to work for you as a everyday camera that you take on a cruise. You want to take some nice photographs. You want a camera that's easy to use. You want a camera that's capable, gives you good image quality, and maybe even video quality. I'm going to take a moment and highlight some of the unique features of this camera. First of all, you'll notice that it fits very nicely in the hand, and it's relatively lightweight given the size of the camera, much lighter than a DSLR like a Canon T2i or 60D or any of the Nikon DSLRs. The camera is very lightweight, and so it will not, bog you down. You can wear it around your neck and you never feel like it's overly burdensome to use this camera. The biggest feature of the camera is the lens. I'm going to turn the camera on and let you see this lens. It does extend as soon as you turn the camera on. But this camera has a 24x zoom lens. Now this camera goes all the way from 25mm out to 600mm. That's amazing for a camera this size. And as you have the little zoom switch over here right around the shutter release button, and as you zoom it out, you'll see the lens does extend out further from the body. That's the maximum setting. And the zoom lens on this camera is very smooth. It's very quiet, so if you want to zoom in or out while you're shooting video, you can do that. The camera allows you to do that. And it's very quiet. You don't get a lot of noise, a motor noise. Now, if you turn the camera around to the back, you'll notice you have the little LCD screen on the back. This is an articulating screen. Very nice, because you can turn it any direction. So if you're shooting self-portrait videos, you can turn it facing the camera so that, or facing the subject so that you can see the picture you're about to take of yourself. You can also, if you're shooting up high, shooting down low, you can rotate the screen. Very, very nice feature. And of course you can close it to protect the screen and use the electronic viewfinder. Now the electronic viewfinder on this camera I found to be a little cumbersome. Number one, it's small, and it is it's basically a miniature LCD screen inside. It is not a through the lens focusing or imaging system. So it's not real crisp or clear, but it is adequate, and it does give you a way to shoot without using the screen on the back. You can turn the screen off and toggle between the viewfinder or the screen using this little button right here. That now turns the screen off, and now it will be using the viewfinder. Turn it back on, and you can see it's very fast. It comes up very quick. If we look at the menu system on this camera, the camera is very easy to set up and very easy to operate. If you're familiar with Panasonic cameras, you'll have no trouble figuring out the FZ100 because the interface is identical. If I go to hit the menu button, which is in the center of the little dial on the back, see that the menus are very logical. You use the little direction keys to make your choices, and you have camera, video, and then your setup or your tools menu. And you can simply use these to go back and forth and set all your various settings. The camera you can probably set up to be ready to shoot in under 5 minutes. It's very, very easy to set up and use, and it gives you a lot of different settings, a lot of capabilities. On top of the camera, you have a mode dial. You have intelligent auto, which is the red IA icon. And what I really like about this camera is as you turn this mode dial on top, the little screen on the back shows you what mode you're setting it to. Very handy. So that if you're shooting in the dark, if you're in a dark room and you can't really see the writing on top of here, you can always tell by turning the wheel what mode you're in. It's a very, very handy little feature. Panasonic does a very good job with their interface. There's a stereo microphone built into the top of the flash unit. The microphones built into this camera are very good. The camera does have an external microphone jack. And it's a 2.5mm plug. Unfortunately, I wish it was a 3.5mm, but it's not. It's 2.5mm. We happen to have a 3.5mm lavalier microphone that we took with us on our trip. And I specifically bought a 3.5 to 2.5 adapter so that I could use that microphone with this camera. I was very disappointed to learn that it will not work with this camera. You have to use Panasonic's hot shoe mount microphone with this external mic jack. And I found that very disappointing because we really wanted to be able to use this camera with a lavalier mic, and we learned that that's not possible. Now on the side of the lens, you'll also notice you have autofocus, autofocus macro, and manual focus. The camera does have manual focus capabilities. It has a lot of manual capabilities, as a matter of fact. Now, using manual focus on this camera is a little bit clumsy because what you have to do is use this little thumb wheel to focus. And as soon as you begin to focus, it will, bring the item into focus or take it out of focus. If you're trying to do pull focus shots or you're trying to do depth of field shots, it's a little clumsy because it's hard to use this wheel and not shake the camera while you're doing it. I would much prefer a focus ring around this lens, and I wish Panasonic would add a ring to use for that manual focus. Another feature of this camera is the built-in flash. You'll notice on the back there is a little button which pops up the built-in flash unit. I found the flash unit on this camera to be very capable and very good. You obviously can put an external flash. This is a hot shoe, and it will accept Panasonic's external flash, and it may work with other external flash units as well. Continuing on the back of the camera, you'll notice a display button which modifies what you see on the screen. You'll notice you have all your little icons back here to show you different settings that are set in the menus. And if you can go to nothing on the back, just a clean screen. You can also have the alignment grid, which I use a lot. Shows you your battery life. You can see up in the corner that I have this camera set to shoot raw pictures. One of the best features of this camera is the ability to shoot raw images. And the camera will allow you to shoot RAW or RAW plus JPEG. One thing I do want to talk about on this camera that I think is a huge feature is the camera does support RAW images. And as you can see, I have the camera set to shoot in RAW. However, you can also shoot RAW plus JPEG, RAW plus high quality JPEG, or simply JPEG or high quality JPEG. You'll also notice on the back of the camera the dial and the 4 function buttons, which are also directional, kind of a mouse button But you have your exposure setting, and if you hit it again, now if you want to change the exposure, you simply use the left and right directional to increase or decrease your exposure, and you can see a reflection of that in the LCD screen. And go back to autofocus so you can see here a little better. Okay, so you can reduce your exposure, increase your exposure. If you hit this button again, it gives you bracketing capabilities, and if you hit it a third time, you can actually set your flash compensation, flash exposure compensation. You can also adjust your ISO. I have mine set to auto right now, but you can use the directional arrows to go up and down through the various ISO settings. Your self timer button has a 2-second, a 10-second, and a continuous setting. And then you also have a function button down here at the bottom, and it lets you do a lot of interesting things where you can set various settings, your saturation, your sharpness, your contrast. And here's a really cool feature for those of you that like to shoot action photos, or let's say you want to shoot your golf swing and replay it in slow motion. And that is the burst shooting capabilities of this camera. The MOS sensor in this FZ100 allows you to shoot some pretty amazing burst images. And you've got this little setting on top. You hit that button and you can see you can go to 2 frames per second with or without autofocus capability, up to 5 frames per second with autofocus. That means it automatically focuses as you're shooting. You don't have to be concerned about it. Now, without the autofocus capability, you go 11 frames per second at a full 14 megapixel. You can also go up to 40 frames per second and up to a maximum of 60 frames per second with a 2.5 megabyte JPEG file. The last thing I want to talk about is the movie button on top of the camera. You can shoot video with this camera regardless of the mode you have the dial set in, which I love. So if I've been shooting photos in program auto, or if I've been shooting in intelligent auto, I don't have to go up here and change a mode. If I need to shoot some video, you simply press this little red button and it will start recording. Now, it will continue to record video until you hit the red button again. Very good video quality on this camera. You can zoom while you're videotaping, in or out. However, the zoom is much slower while you're shooting video than it is if you're just using the zoom before you take a picture. On the bottom of the camera, Panasonic has put the little door, and this is where your battery is. Here's your rechargeable lithium-ion battery. Panasonic does give you a very nice charger that plugs right into the wall outlet, so you don't have to carry a cord with you for recharging. I really like that. You also have the SD card slot right here next to the battery. And this all works fine. The only thing I don't like about it is that you'll see the tripod mount right here. Well, if you have a tripod mounting plate on this camera, you always have to take it off to get to the battery or to the SD card. I find that to be a little cumbersome. I wish they had put the tripod mount further over, or if they had put the SD card slot on the side where you could get to the SD card without having to open the door at all on the bottom. But in any case, it's not a huge thing, but it is a slight annoyance that on a camera of this size, I would think they would have been able to work around. And probably the biggest annoyance is when I would grab this camera, I would almost always inadvertently put the camera into playback mode because my thumb would hit this green button right here. I also often would hit the ISO and bring up the ISO selection. And it wasn't a huge thing because as soon as you tap the autofocus shutter release button, those go away. So it puts it right back into record mode. And all in all, I think it's a camera I can very highly recommend. It's a step up from a Pocket Digital. We still love our old Panasonic ZS7. It's still a great camera. But this has the MOS sensor that will shoot better video quality, the huge lens, that gets you out 24x. So if you're looking for a lot of zoom capability, this camera is going to get it to you. You're not going to be wanting for additional zoom. And it has a lot of manual capabilities. You can set your aperture priority, shutter priority, full manual mode. You even have a manual video mode where you can set your aperture and settings while shooting video. Very nice features for a camera in this price range. I think you should highly consider the Panasonic FZ100. Great camera.